Okay, it's 8:30, and welcome to week number 4 of critical skills, communication, written and oral communication, in criminal justice, J122. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Okay, as you can see, it gives information. Now, this is week 4, and remember this note here that you must conduct research or you'll lose 2 points. This is the week. Hostage assignment must include citations in the body and references at the end. It is APA, and you will be graded accordingly. I have stressed this since the beginning of the quarter, so I want to remind you of that. So now let's take a look at the week 4 announcement. Okay, here we go. It says in the 4th week, special communication challenges in criminal justice will be presented. Read chapters 5 and 12 of written and interpersonal communication and reported in writing, section 3. So you want to make sure you get that corrected. Also read the section communication barriers in police work and hostage negotiations. We're going to go over that a little bit, and then pay attention to the video, Spanish law commands, which we're going to go over, and I'm going to play this for you so you'll have a chance to see it. And then finally, you have your discussion assignment. The initial post was due on Tuesday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Sorry, I don't speak Spanish, and many of you have provided some pretty good answers in your initial post, and you've given some very detailed ones for the most part. And then the reply post due on Saturday. Remember, if you don't get the post in on time, you lose points. You lose 1 point for each day it's late, all the way until you get to the end of the discussion period. Any post submitted after that will not receive points. Finally, you complete the written hostage and then the writing skills quiz. These are both due on Sunday, this Sunday, the 30th. And then be sure you can complete the mid-quarter student survey. I always look at those, and they help me a whole lot. And then finally, my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. And so that's based on some experiences that I've had in life, and I'm going to possibly share that at the end of today's lecture. Now let's take a look at the course calendar. Course calendar. For this week, there's your reading assignment, there's your initial post, the lecture, the reply post, and then your written assignment, hostage, and the quiz, and then there's a survey. And then for the project introduction, it's not necessarily a written assignment, but it's a reminder of what's coming. So you want to let's go back to sharing. So anyway, these are some of the things. So now let's take a look at the actual module itself. First of all, let's look and see what the assignments are, and you'll see what I was talking about. Of course, your discussion post, your initial post. It's a 1 to 3 page report. And make sure that you read the instructions carefully. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly, because if you do a 1-page report, you're going to need a cover sheet, you're going to need citations and references. You know, if you go over 1 page, that's fine, don't worry about it. And you're going to use one of these techniques, escalation, de-escalation, or critical incident techniques. You're going to deal with a hostage taker who is mentally disturbed or is a criminal. Choose one. Don't worry about which one. Whichever one you start out with, you can apply any of these principles. De-escalation or critical incident, 1 or 2, all right? And then submit your assignment in the Dropbox accordingly. And then take the skills quiz. Notice that there's no written assignment about the project, but it's just an introduction that's going to be shared with you. So now let's take a look at the lesson content. So we're dealing with the fact that, remember I talked about diversity at the very beginning of the course. You're going to be dealing with other cultures, and you're going to deal with different ways to communicate with different people. People who are out, who are drunk, who can't hear, or have mental issues. And you're going to have to develop strategies for communicating with them. We're going to talk about some of that. So then you're going to discuss issues. We're going to discuss issues of communicating with party and hostage situations. Escalation, de-escalation techniques, and critical incident techniques. And then, of course, you're going to apply your grammar and writing mechanics to spelling, punctuation, and homophones. You're going to make sure that you also do well on the writing skills quiz as well. So let's start out by talking about some communication barriers. Now, here is a scenario where you're a correction officer and you're telling this individual who's at intake. And intake is when the inmate first comes in to be processed before they're sent to the place where they're going to be staying, or to the location they're going to be staying. So you, in the intake, you let them know about who you are, who you are, and what you're going to do. And you ask the person to have a seat, and so that they can complete some forms. So she doesn't do anything. Ask that person again. So now here's a question as to how you're going to deal with that situation. So you have to ask yourself the question and be able to, is that person really being obstinate? Or is there a communication barrier? In other words, maybe they don't speak the language, maybe they can't hear, or whatever the reason, you're not connecting in terms of communication. So you as the professional have to be prepared to deal with those situations. Don't assume that the person is being obstinate. Oftentimes, unfortunately, that is the position that too many individuals in criminal justice take, and and you may try to force a person to the seat. Not a good thing, because you don't know what the problem is or the issue. They could even have a health issue. So before you make any judgment, you have to evaluate the entire situation and to make sure there are no legitimate communication barriers. And there are some. So and if the person is being obstinate, then you want to try to not force them, because it creates a hostile environment. And possibly it's not going to, remember you're in intake. You don't want, that person might not be happy about where they're going. They may not be happy about being incarcerated. But the point of the matter is that you don't want to escalate them to a higher level than they are. So let's talk about some barriers to communication. What are some barriers? The inmate may be deaf, or not able to hear. There are people that you run across. I know there's a young man that I run into all the time at the store, and, you know, I'll say something, and then I'm not thinking. I say, oh, but then I'll smile, raise my hand, reach out to him to shake his hand, or either give him a hug or a high five, and we communicate from that particular point. But unless that person is facing me or close enough to read my lips, which some people can, but many can't, then we're not going to be communicating. So we have to be able to recognize that. So what do you do in a situation like that? Well, of course, you know, one of the things you can do is write stuff down for the person. Give them commands on paper, little simple commands, like please sit down, and write that. You know, you don't give them try to confuse them. Or you may have someone on staff that you want to call in that is able to interpret. And then that opens up lines of communication. Let's say the next possible barrier is that the person doesn't speak the language. They may speak a different language than what you understand. They may speak Spanish and not even speak any English at all, or poquito, as we say in Espanol, or Spanish, a little bit of Spanish, or they may speak Polish or some other Slavic language, or it could be a totally different language that they may not understand English at all. So the point of the matter is, if you know the language that that person is speaking and you determine what language they speak, then maybe you can get someone to help to interpret for you so that you can communicate. Because if a person doesn't understand English, you can write commands all day long. Now you can give some hand commands, and they'll basically communicate with you. But as far as what you're going to need to do, you're going to need to. The other thing is that, let's say, for example, you have somebody filling out forms, and it's not written in their language, and they'll look at it. They won't even know what it says. It's common, not uncommon, to see documents that are two-sided in high Hispanic communities, where one side has the Spanish language and the other side has the English language on it. Or they'll combine the two together. I know at the bank that I go to, which is Chase, they have a deposit slip, and it has things like la fecha, which means the date, you know, Phenomon for, you know, signing the name, and other things in there that are in Spanish and in English so that people can understand. So what would you do? Next point of all, you got an officer or co-worker who can interpret, as I said. Of course, if you're in the field, most officers rely on family members. Now, neighbors. Now, here's my problem with that, and I expressed this in replying to a discussion post that we had for this week to one of our students who suggested doing that, is that there are times when, you know, you're the police, okay, you're law enforcement, you're not considered as amigo or friend, and so as a result, in that community, someone interpreting for you, they may be tipping that other person off. They may not be correctly interpreting for you what's being said. They may leave some critical issues out. Plus, you don't understand what they're talking about if you don't know the language at all. So if it's a family member particularly, you might have a problem. Of course, though, it depends. Now, if it's a person that you consider as a possible suspect, then you know, because you don't know whose family member is who's related to, who's close friends with who. But the bottom line is that oftentimes law enforcement is looked at as the enemy. And so the neighbors will stick together. along with the family members. And so that I have trouble with. So now, and it makes sense if you really stop and apply some good old common sense. I remember one time I was doing some business with someone, and I was at their house, and I was listening to them speak to each other, and they were just talking, and they were saying some pretty bad things to each other. And so then I says, te hablo poquito en español. And they say, comprende? I said, sí. In other words, did you understood? Yes, I did. So they were embarrassed, you know, and there were some things that they were saying, not about me, but about each other, which, they said their mother would knock them out for the things they said. Anyway, the bottom line is you got to be careful with that issue there of having someone else. Now, let's say if the person is mentally ill or under the influence. Let's go with the mentally ill scenario first. In that instance, you're probably going to have to be very patient, number one. You're going to have to keep the tone. You can't speak too fast. You may even have to have an expert or professional to come in and help you to deal with that mentally ill individual because of the fact that that person might perceive you as the enemy no matter what, and don't perceive you as trying to help them at all. So this inmate there is looking at you in a negative light. Then let's just say if they're under the influence, well, of course, you know that person is not in control of anything, and with them being inebriated like that, their faculties are dull, their ability to comprehend and communicate is off, and again, you have to be very careful. So the last thing you want to do is agitate a person who's mentally ill or under the influence. So what do you do? Speak in a calm, direct manner, patience, as I said. Use open-ended questions, questions that don't pose a yes or no response. You want them to supply you with information. Be clear, concise. Avoid complicated directions. And, of course, above all things, something we talked about a couple of weeks ago, maintain eye contact to be able to continue to communicate. So you're going to have to deal with these issues, and you're going to have to be the professional one to be able to do so. Okay? So before we get to the Spanish enforcement commands, which we're going to close with, I want to talk a little bit about hostage negotiations. In a hostage negotiation situation, it is a very stressful situation, probably one of the most stressful events that you'll ever face in your criminal justice profession. And it's where your communication skills are called upon to be at the highest level. Now, kind of akin to a hostage situation, and it does happen sometimes, these are hostage situations, where an individual is holding a spouse or children hostage, and the reason, and you get a call as a police officer in a 911 call, and it's a domestic, and you get there, you need to be aware of the fact that when you're trained, as I was trained as a police officer, that we had to be on high alert whenever we answered those kind of calls, because there were two potential enemies. One of the obvious enemies is the person that is the perpetrator that committed the offense. But you need to be aware also in these domestic situations, no matter how serious they are, there are times when the individual who called you or who's been abused or mistreated or beaten when you attempt to arrest or handle or take control of that individual, something will rise up in them, and they will come to the defense of those individuals. It happens, and it goes with the territory. So we are taught to recognize that. I have seen situations where the police arrive, the person is all beat up and everything, the house is in disarray, and the person who committed the offense, they grab them, and the person will generally say, most time it's a female, will turn around and say, "That's my man. Be careful, don't hurt him." Well, the man already hurt you, and you called them, but then they'll slip into the mode of possibly treating you as the enemy and attack. So you have to be ready in those kind of situations, which is kind of akin to a hostage. The other day here in our area, we had a hostage situation, so they thought. And what happened is that the individual was held up in a house with a weapon, and the police, SWAT and everybody was called out. The standoff, where they tried to communicate with the individual wouldn't communicate with them. And finally, after so many hours, it took 5 or 6 hours, they finally ended up getting into the place and finding out that there was nobody there. Not even the defendant had gotten away. But you can't be careless with this situation, especially in a situation where a person is holding someone hostage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about dealing with those situations. So don't get fretful. You'll receive a lot of training in the academy, but I can tell you this already. Whatever you learn in the academy and with your consistent training will be nothing like what you face when you face the very first one. I'll never forget it. But you do learn the basics, and you build a toolkit for hostage negotiations. Now remember, you're not the hostage experts, because most departments have hostage experts. These are psychologists. They're police officers, but they're also trained in that hostage negotiation. And so they will have that. But be aware of the fact that in your respective agencies, as it says here, you'll have special procedures and policies that you'll have to be aware of and apply. And we did what is said here. It says role playing, where we act out the role as a hostage taker, as a victim, and then as policemen, and we switched off. And so again, that was to give us a working knowledge of dealing with this, so that we can try to maintain the status quo until the hostage team, as stated out here, says many times and almost all the time, departments have specialized teams to deal with the situation. So the key thing is that you want to try to prevent further damage from taking place until that team arrives. When dealing with a hostage taker, again, remember to remain calm, as we talked about earlier, in communicating with a person who is inebriated or either has a mental issue. Remain calm and focused on the situation at hand. And so you want to understand what the hostage taker is asking, what their demands are, what they want, and what are they trying to accomplish in the situation. And you want to show some interest in that individual, and that you let them know that you're considering what they're needing to do, but do not, as it says at the end of this sentence, give false promises. That's one of the worst things in the world you can do. Make a promise that you know is not going to happen, and it can cause the death of someone. So It is a very strenuous situation, as you will discover. You go to this FBI website that we have off to the right, and it has some bulletins and other further information that you can find articles on crisis negotiation, role-playing, and other topics that relate to hostage situation. Also there's some other things that are involved as well. So check it out and see what you can discover. That's one source that will lead you to information to help you with this written assignment also that you have. That will be due on Sunday. Okay, so with that being said, again, remind you about the student survey. So now I want to take a little time. This is about 26 minutes, and I'm going to run this recording so that you will be able to learn these commands, and you'll have them. Just in case technology is something, sometimes you can't open it. And so I'm going to have it.
America's Hispanic population is growing at an enormous rate, and it's bringing with it a major problem for law enforcement. Hello, I'm Ron Barber. And I'm Don Marsh. That problem is language. Many of our newer Hispanic residents speak little or no English, so if there is a competition, it would serve the officer well to know some basic Spanish. That's what this video is designed to do, help you, the officer, better communicate with Spanish-speaking people. One of our guides on this journey is Officer Brady Walker.
I'm Officer Brady Walker with the St. Louis Police Department. We're kind of running some very simple Spanish commands. It's one of the easiest things you've ever done. Here we go.
Our first lesson involves some very basic words to get you started. until they feel comfortable with them. And they're especially trying every time they find an opportunity. The officers are there to help. These words should be helpful in an emergency. Buenos días. Good morning. Buenos días. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Good evening. Buenas noches. Good evening. Buenas noches. You. Usted. You. Usted. Yes. Sí. Yes. Sí. No. 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 Car. Carro. Car. Carro. Thank you. Gracias. Thank you. Gracias. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Calm down. Cálmese. Calm down. Cálmese. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Get into the car. Entre al carro. Get into the car. Entre al carro. Buenos días. Buenas tardes. Buenas noches. Usted. Sí. No. Carro. Gracias. No se preocupe. Cálmese. Salga del carro. Entre al carro. Gathering information is essential. This lesson will help you gather the basics. ¿Cómo se llama? What is your name? ¿Cómo se llama? You speak English. Habla inglés. Do you speak English? Habla inglés. Write your name. Escriba su nombre. Write your name. Escriba su nombre. Where do you live? ¿Dónde vive? Where do you live? ¿Dónde vive? Write your address. Escriba su dirección. Write your address. Escriba su dirección. Sit down. Siéntese. Sit down. Siéntese. Come here. Venga aquí. Come here. Venga aquí. Turn around. Voltéese. Turn around. Voltéese. You have the next phone call. ¿Quiere llamar por teléfono? We have the next phone call. ¿Quiere llamar por teléfono? ¿Cómo se llama? ¿Habla inglés? Escriba su nombre. ¿Dónde vive? Escriba su dirección. Siéntese. Ven aquí. Voltéese. ¿Quiere llamar por teléfono? licencia, por favor. Your driver's license, please. Su licencia, por favor. Your car registration, please. Su matrícula del carro, por favor. Your car registration, please. Su matrícula del carro, por favor. Wait here. Espere aquí. Wait here. Espere aquí. The insurance card for your car. La tarjeta de seguro para su carro. The insurance card for your car. La tarjeta de seguro para su carro. The insurance card for the hospital. La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital. The insurance card for the hospital. La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital. This is a ticket. Esto es una multa. This is a ticket. Esto es una multa. Apague el motor. Su licencia, por favor. Su matrícula del carro, por favor. Espera aquí. La tarjeta de seguro para su carro. La tarjeta de seguro para el hospital. Esto es una multa. Basic commands here in Lesson 7. If you feel arrest is probable. No se mueva. On the ground, face down. En el suelo, boca abajo. On the ground, face down. En el suelo, boca abajo. Spread your feet. Abra sus pies. Spread your feet. Abra sus pies. You are under arrest. Está arrestado. You are under arrest. Está arrestado. You are not under arrest. No está arrestado. You are not under arrest. No está arrestado. Let me see your hands. Déjenme ver sus manos. Let me see your hands. Déjenme ver sus manos. No se mueva. En el suelo boca abajo. Abra sus pies. Está arrestado. No está arrestado. Déjenme ver sus manos. Lesson 8. Some basic and important questions. Have you had any alcohol to drink today? ¿Ha bebido alcohol hoy? Have you had any alcohol to drink today? ¿Ha bebido alcohol hoy? Have you had any alcohol to drink tonight? ¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche? Have you had any alcohol to drink tonight? ¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche? Have you had any drugs today? ¿Ha usado drogas hoy? Have you had any drugs today? ¿Ha usado drogas hoy? Do you have a weapon? ¿Tiene un arma? Do you have a weapon? ¿Tiene un arma? Put the weapon on the ground. Ponga el arma en el suelo. Put the weapon on the ground. Ponga el arma en el suelo. When you're allowed to search your vehicle, me deja buscar en su carro. ¿Ha bebido alcohol esta noche? ¿Ha usado drogas hoy? ¿Tiene un arma? Ponga el arma en el suelo. Lesson 9. More questions related to the stop. Where are you going? ¿A dónde va? Where are you going? ¿A dónde va? Where are you coming from? ¿De dónde viene? Where are you coming from? ¿De dónde viene? Do you have any weapons and needles? ¿Tiene algún arma o agujas? Do you have any weapons and needles? ¿Tiene algún arma o agujas? Are there any weapons or drugs in your vehicle? ¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro? Are there any weapons or drugs in your vehicle? ¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro? I need to handcuff you for your protection of mine. Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía. I need to handcuff you for your protection and mine. Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía. ¿A dónde va? ¿De dónde viene? ¿Tiene algún arma o agujas? ¿Hay armas o agujas en su carro? Tengo que ponerle las esposas para su protección y la mía. Number 10. Keywords and phrases to remember. Stop. Alto. Stop. Alto. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Get out of the car. Salga del carro. Do you speak English? ¿Habla inglés? Do you speak English? ¿Habla inglés? What is your name? ¿Cómo se llama? What is your name? ¿Cómo se llama? Are you hurt? ¿Está herido? Are you hurt? ¿Está herido? You need help? ¿Necesita ayuda? Do you need help? ¿Necesita ayuda? Calm down. Cálmese. Calm down. Cálmese. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Don't worry. No se preocupe. Let me see your hands. Déjeme ver sus manos. Let me see your hands. Déjeme ver sus manos. Wait here. Espere aquí. Wait here. Espere aquí. You are under arrest. Está arrestado. You are under arrest. Está arrestado. You are not under arrest. No está arrestado. You are not under arrest. No está arrestado. Alto. Salga del carro. ¿Habla inglés? ¿Cómo se llama? ayuda. Cálmese. No se preocupe. Déjeme ver sus manos. Espere aquí. Está arrestado. No está arrestado. Practice does make perfect, and that's what Thursday language is all about. Practicing and repetition. Good luck. Do you have any thoughts on learning some simple Spanish command? Please share them with us. Our email address is rightofduty@AOL.com. Our worldwide web address, rightofduty.com. I'm Ron Garber, and I'm Don Marsh.
Okay. So that is some good Spanish-speaking terms that you can learn that will benefit you, and you can look at that over and over and over, and you can save that. So, well, I'm going to take the next few minutes, and I'm going to tell you something. You see my motto at the end of every announcement, highlighted adversity as a springboard to success. Let me explain it to you from my perspective, why I can empathize with each of you who have adversity in your lives as you go through school. I'll start by just telling you what happened. When I was 7 years old, this goes back to 1957, long time ago. And my dad, he loves sports, he loves baseball. And my dad took me to a baseball game. And we came home that Memorial Day. They had been celebrating Memorial Day with grilling and playing cards, doing all kinds of things. So anyway, that evening, it was time for us to go to bed. It was my 5 younger sisters and me. We were all in one room, and we had different beds. I had my little bed, and they had bunk beds. Anyway, the bottom line is we shared that room, and we were there. Well, sometime that night, a fight broke out in the house. The fight was between my dad and a guy who had rented a room from my mother and father that they had met, and the fight took place. Well, I would find out years later what the fight was all about. My father confronted him about having an affair with my mother. And so anyway, the guy ended up pinning my dad in a corner. The lights were on in the room, and he reached into his pocket, took out a switchblade, and stabbed my dad in the forehead. And all the blood started pouring out of my dad's head, all over his eyes and everything. And I, to this day, still remember it because I have a photographic memory. Well, the guy ended up taking off, leaving, running. And then a few days, so then the police came, took my dad's body away, and my dad would die in the hospital. So as a result of that, then the man, next few days, something that confused me, he ended up now not in his room, but now sleeping openly with my mother in another area. And that troubled me, of course, but I didn't understand. So anyway, the man proceeded to continue to live with us. Suddenly, he became openly violent with my mother. He would beat her with weapons. I mean, he beat her with a bat one time. He stabbed her with a knife. Didn't kill her, but he did some really bad things to her. He beat her face so bad that her face was disfigured. And he would end up going to jail, and my mother would go back and get him and bring him back to the house. My mother didn't work. We were on public assistance, and the man, he was a construction worker. So he was a source of income. So thus, I lived in a house with domestic violence. The way that I found out that there was no Santa Claus is one year he got upset with my mother and he sat us all down on the floor, and there was a closet that was always locked. He, with his muscular self, tore the door off the hinges, and from top to bottom there were toys in that closet, and he ended up pulling down all the toys. Now the toy at the top was something that I wanted really bad for Christmas, and it was a red fire truck. Well, he got upset with us somehow because of her, and he says, "I'm Santa," and he took an axe and chopped those toys up, my sister's dolls and other toys, in front of us. Very traumatic situation. My mother still wouldn't leave him. So finally some time passed, and we came to 1962 when I was 12 years old, and we moved away from that area because it got pretty bad. The gangs were pretty rough over there. So my mother bought a house in an area of Gary, Indiana that was pretty nice. It was a nice family area. They had Little League and single family dwelling and grass and everything. So she bought a house, and when she bought that house, she moved there, and so did the guy. Well, by this time, my mother had 2 more children by this man, and they were girls. The baby, she was born in '62, so she was very little. So anyway, we stayed there at the house, and he started getting violent again. Then an aunt came from Michigan to stay with us, and she was pretty tough. She didn't take any nonsense from anybody. In fact, she was known for carrying a gun herself. It was pretty rough. So there were no issues. But then he left sometime. She left rather sometime in '63, early in the year, and she left to go back to her place in Michigan. Well, Memorial Day of 1963, my mother, who had owned a restaurant, barbecue restaurant in downtown Gary, left me in charge of the house, as often I did. And so Memorial Day of 1963, my mother, I woke up and the house was full of smoke. I saw the car pull off, but you know, my mother's bed had been slept in, but that wasn't unusual. So anyway, I started taking care of the house, getting things cleaned up. My baby sister, I was taking care of her. And then these 2 gentlemen showed up at the front door, and they produced badges, and they were police officers. And they asked, was I the oldest? I said, yes. They says, we found your mother in Chicago dead. What had happened is that he had stabbed her multiple times around the corner from the house. He actually drove back to the house, and he turned on the gas. But there was still some barbecue in the oven, and so he left. Now, I found this out much later, and that's what woke me up, the smoke. And then I opened the windows and doors, and I saw the car pull off. So he doesn't know. He didn't know at that time what happened. It was fortunate, thank God, that he didn't. No telling what could have happened then. So anyway, he left, and as I said, the police said he drove her around, turned himself in Chicago, and he confessed to killing my mother. He said she attacked him. She was a little lady, and he was a big muscular guy. So anyway, my aunt came back from Michigan, and they took us to stay with another aunt, her sister, in Chicago on the south side, in what was called the Chatham area. We stayed there. My aunt didn't really want us there because she said that her household was not, out of control like ours, and that we were not the best of kids because we've been through a lot, and her kids were better. It was terrible being put down, forced to clean up this woman's house while her kids went to the YMCA and other events. I remember they would order pizza and they stayed upstairs. We stayed in the basement, which was a nice area. It wasn't a rough basement. It actually was an apartment down there. But at any rate, they would get pizza, and then they'd bring us the crust, and that's what we would have. So that's how we were treated. So finally, my aunt, her sister, oldest one, came back. Like I said, she was from Michigan. She took us out of there and moved us into a house in the south side of Chicago, in what's called the Morgan Park area called Maple Park. And we ended up living in that house. Well, by this time, I turned 14 years old. I was in 8th grade, starting 8th grade. I was a year behind of everything because of the movement back and forth from Indiana to Illinois. But at any rate, I found out that the man had pled guilty, that he was going to receive 10 years for killing my mother. So I said, 10 years? I said, well, okay. But then it was brought to my attention that 10 years really meant 5, because for good behavior, he would have it cut in half, this day for a day, sir. And then for further good behavior, a year and a half would be cut down. I'll move this over so you can see. And then he would serve basically 3 1/2 years. I was very, very, very troubled. I couldn't rest. I was inquisitive and asked people constantly, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And they said, that's just the way it is. No one would give me an acceptable answer. Then finally someone mentioned to me these people called lawyers. So I didn't know anything about lawyers. So I went to school, and I asked the librarian, did they have any books on lawyers or attorneys? And she said, we have this one book. And I took the book out of the library. And I took that book home that night. And I read that book from cover to cover. And the next day, anybody I met from that point on, I'd introduce myself as Richard Wright and tell people I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, one of my aunts, the same one who didn't want us at her house, she told me, she says, you know what, you're aiming high. You don't have what it takes to do that. You're not going to be able to do that. And your mom, I know, she was my sister, she wouldn't take advice. And I know who you guys were raised, not your fault, but you're going to be very disappointed. So I am the kind of person, this is what I teach. I never told her, okay, I'm going to show you. I don't believe in that. I believe action speaks louder than words. And so I ended up, of course, going on with my life. I ended up graduating from high school. I did meet a lady because I was tired of the way things were going with my aunt and uncle, because there was more violence there between them. And I asked this stranger I heard on the radio to be my mother. And she became my friend and a mentor to me. And she, you know, she would periodically take me, and I'd stay at her house sometime, go on trips with her family and those kind of things. Well, at any rate, I ended up graduating from high school, and one of my friend's mothers had a friend who was a secretary, a legal secretary at a big law firm in Chicago, and they asked her if she could help me get a job in the mailroom, and I did. I got a job there working in the mailroom as a messenger. As soon as I got there, I registered in school at night. Went to junior college and started taking classes at night. I had public transportation. I didn't have a car. This was the days, of course, before computers, laptop, and all that. I had big books, and I had to carry those books every day back and forth on public transportation. And I studied on the L train, on the bus. So anyway, I would have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning, and so I had to get up real early, and then I would finish at 4 and have to be in class at 4:30. And I did that Monday through Friday, and then I had some Monday through Thursdays, and then I had Saturday classes. And I did that strictly with public transportation. it was pretty tough. I got married right away against the advice of a lot of people. I was 20 years old when I got married. So then about a year later, here comes my first child. And then the year after that, my second child. So here I was in school. My first wife, she was in school too because she graduated a year after me. She was studying to be a teacher. So I went through college, and while I was working at the law firm, I would let every lawyer know, anybody I met, that I was going to be a lawyer. And, you know, they kept hearing me repeat it and talk about it. I was doing well in school because I was focused. I've stayed on the dean's list. I received good grades. And so anyway, I ended up getting promoted at the law firm from a messenger to a file clerk. From a file clerk. By the way, when I was a messenger, I took a package one day to a gentleman that I got to know, spent a couple of years going to a lot of places and listening to him talk about his company. His name was Wright. The name of the company was McDonald's. And I learned a lot about McDonald's because of that. So I had people who were interested in me. And so anyway, and the way that happened is that I was a messenger who always wore a shirt and tie. The other guys, they would dress casually and so forth. I didn't. I wore a shirt and a tie, and I would dress in business-like slacks. And that's why I stood out. So at any rate, they promoted me to file clerk. And then after that, I continued moving up in school. They moved me up to the law librarian because the law librarian died. And then while I was law librarian, I used to sit in the library and I used to file away the books and take care of the books. I was custodian of the books. And so I ended up listening to the guys and gals talk about research and how they were doing and what they were doing. And I taught myself. I got some pamphlets and sat down and learned. Well, they discovered that I knew that. So they ended up taking me from being in the mailroom itself and took me, and they hired a person to file the books away and then made me what's called a law clerk at that time, which now is a paralegal. I used to sit down and write memos. We used to do research. I used to go to court. I used to go to real estate closing and other business meetings and just sit and listen, and I learned and I learned and I learned. In the meantime, I left the junior college, went to a four-year institution to finish my next 2 years, Roosevelt University, got accepted there, and I stayed on the honor roll and the dean's list and did pretty well. In fact, I was selected as the representative of the university when I graduated in 1975 for an award down in Springfield, Illinois, where my name was enshrined. It was called the Lincoln Academy, and right now it's still there. It's like a Hall of Fame for students. At any rate, while I was doing all of that, I ended up applying to one law school. Now, I was told to apply to 3 law schools, but I was determined. I had my mind set on Northwestern University School of Law. That was where I said I was going to go. And see, I wasn't cocky or arrogant. I was just so sure and secure within myself that I could do it. Well, when my aunt found out that I was doing that, she said, I don't think you can get in that school. You know, they wouldn't take my daughter in there. And so she's very smart. And, you know, so I didn't say nothing to her either again. So, you know what happened is that they turned her down. And then when I applied, yes, I got in. And what happened is that something very unusual. I was actually invited for a campus visit. They don't do that because they had, 250 members in the class. I think they had probably about 2,000 to 3,000 people vying for each seat. It was some ridiculous number like that. But I got one, and I was one of the 250. So I got accepted into law school here. soon as I got in law school, my wife at that time, who graduated, by the way, it took me 7 years to graduate from college, but it was okay because I had to lighten my load sometimes because I had a lot of issues I had to deal with. I had financial issues and other things. So I ended up in my first year of law school, which was pretty tough. My wife at that time had graduated. She was a teacher, and that was the first time in history that they had gone out on a teacher strike. And we didn't have any money coming in because I was working. I wasn't working. I was in school, and I couldn't do both of them like I did in undergrad because, especially for the first year, they wouldn't allow it in the first place. And then have night school or any of those things. So anyway, I struggled on through. We had the lights and power turned off and all that. I studied by candlelight. We took the 2 kids and we let them go to their grandmother's house, but we stuck it out. The bottom line is that I made it through to law school. I made it through law school. And when I made it through law school, the first person that I invited to my graduation in 1978, you guessed it, was that same aunt who kept telling me over and over. And she came. And she got there. She was so excited. She was introducing herself to people. This was the first time she ever owned me up as being her nephew. And there were judges. There were lawyers who knew me because of the kind of person that I was. By the way, the guy who was a keynote speaker, a guy named R. Eugene Pencham, who became a judge, he's now passed on, but he was a renowned criminal defense lawyer. He suggested I go to a conference in California, which I did in '84, and I met Johnny Cochran 10 years before the OJ case. But I was exposed to people like that. So this gentleman told me, Judge Pencham, to be a defense attorney and that I would learn the system better than if I was a prosecutor. So people thought it was crazy, so I took him up on it and I became a criminal defense lawyer. Let me digress a little bit. When I was in law school, we had to do a senior research paper. Now, you're talking about a paper, you guys. We didn't have computers. We didn't have laptops. We had to do footnotes, and we had so many people who had to read this and accept it. And if they didn't, you had so many times, and if they didn't, you didn't graduate. Well, I worked hard, and I presented my paper. My paper was on a revision of the Illinois Criminal Code, the first major revision since 1961, in which we came up with determinate sentencing, Class X felonies, extended terms, habitual offender act, and some of those other things. I helped rewrite that with my research. Obviously, then later I become a defense attorney. But I knew when I presented my cases what I was dealing with. When it came to sentencing, I helped set up the aggravating issues and the mitigating issues that would be considered for sentencing. I knew those inside out. So I was bam, bam, bam on top of it. So I became a defense lawyer. I loved jury trials and did extremely well in front of juries. I used to get a lot of people that would be on the juries, and they would hear me, and after the case was over, they were allowed to talk to us, and they asked me for my card, which was perfectly legal, and I got clients from those situations. So it did pretty well. In the meantime, I started doing radio. I came up with the concept and idea of a radio show called Know Your Rights, which is spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S, my last name, and I was given legal advice on 3 radio stations. Well, anyway, the long and short of the situation is that I ended up being successful as a criminal defense lawyer. 91 to 93. Oh, by the way, I had my 3rd daughter in 1978. She's 39, and now she's a student. She just decided to go back to school herself after being married with 3 of my grandkids. 3 of my 11 grandkids that I have now. And so anyway, I ended up going on, and 91 and 93, I went to seminary for Master Arts Religion. I became a minister. And so anyway, I ended up going through practicing, and then in 89, I ended up, well, I was divorced in 87, and then 88, I got married again. And my second wife, my mother, became the village president or mayor in a town, corrupt town called Ford Heights in the south suburbs. I became her village attorney. I became a village prosecutor. I became a part-time police officer because I said I wasn't going to take the job unless I carry a gun. So I went to training for that as well. And then I started investigations because there were some corrupt issues that were going on with the police department. So I did that until 93. And so, yeah, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93. So anyway, she lost the election. So anyway, I ended up reaching the point where law wasn't really that exciting to me anymore. And after 96, I started slowing down and finally decided to completely say, I'm done, I'm retired, announced it in 2000 when I was 50 to pursue a career in ministry. I taught special education, I ran a couple of businesses on the side, and then ultimately in 2011, I found myself coming to Rasmussen College. They offered me a job to teach business law. It was residentially at the Romeoville campus. Quickly, as I was hired by the dean and the campus director, I told them that I was a criminal justice man, and so they, after that, switched me into criminal justice. So I was a part-time professor there. And then I did so much extra work there on the campus that they gave me an award that normally is given to a full-time faculty member. And anyway, ultimately, there was an opening for what they called State Program Coordinator of the School of Justice Studies of Illinois. And I applied for that position because a guy left. And the dean interviewed me over the phone and hired me. And I became State Program Coordinator, which I had responsibility for the 4 Illinois campuses, Romeoville, Aurora, Mokina, and Aurora, Romeoville, Mokina, and Rockford. And so anyway, until they changed that position, and I was teaching then. Oh, and by the way, I was teaching residentially at first, then they said they were going online. Well, here's yours truly. I had to learn the whole process of dealing with internet. I had already known about internet, but learning how to conduct a class online and all of that. All of that I learned. I am a person who believes that there's nothing too hard, and I don't care what barriers I have. So I bring all of that to the table as I now have been teaching criminal justice since roughly 2012 at Rasmussen. I know these courses well. I know the topics well because having been a professional in the fields that they cover, including paralegal now, I know what it takes. I know what it takes to be good. And so I bring that to all of my students. And so, therefore, that is why my motto is adversity is the springboard to success. I have been successful. I have many students that after they have graduated, they needed job references. They were good students. I wrote letters for them. I spoke to people for them. I was interviewed for a couple of students to check their backgrounds and stuff like that. All these things I continue to do even today. So just wanted to take time to share with you that information so you'll now understand why at the end of my announcements, adversity is the springboard to success. Some of you in this class have already had some adversities, some problems. I've talked with a few of you, but I will tell you this. I mean what I say. I'm here to be a support to my students before, when you run into a problem, and after you finish. I'm still around. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'm still going to be helping till this last breath leaves this body. So with all of that, I'm going to say good night to you.